The fire was dying. Ryan Torres knelt in ash and debris, his medkit spread open beside him, hands moving with automatic precision through rubble that used to be Outpost KL-7. The battle had ended 3 hours ago with the kind of brutal efficiency that left more corpses than survivors. And now, the only sounds were the crackling of cooling wreckage and the occasional groan of structural supports deciding whether to collapse. He'd found 6 coalition soldiers in the first sweep, treated what he could, marked 3 for immediate evac, and tagged 2 as expectant. The ugly military term for people too far gone to save with field resources. The 6th had died while Ryan was setting up a plasma line, just stopped breathing between 1 second and the next. And Ryan had moved on because stopping to process death in a combat zone was a luxury medics couldn't afford. The Valkyrie bodies were harder. Ryan treated wounded enemies because that's what the conventions required and because fundamentally he didn't see soldiers, he saw patients. But Valkyrie physiology was different enough from human that his training became educated guesswork. And he'd lost 2 already because their circulatory systems didn't respond to human coagulants the way he'd hoped. He was checking the collapsed command center, really just making sure no one was trapped beneath the rubble before he moved to the next sector, when his scanner caught something. Life sign, faint but present, buried under what used to be the roof. Ryan started clearing debris, working carefully because shifting the wrong beam could crush whoever was underneath. The armor appeared first. Not standard Valkyrie combat gear, but something else entirely. Ornate, clearly expensive, with engravings that even Ryan's untrained eye recognized as high status. He cleared faster, adrenaline overriding exhaustion, and finally exposed her face. Valkyrie, female, unconscious. Her skin had those silver circuit patterns he'd seen on other Valkyrie soldiers, but hers were more intricate, more elaborate. Blood matted her silver hair, and her breathing was shallow enough that his scanner screamed warnings about imminent system failure. Ryan didn't hesitate. He checked for spinal injury, found none, and carefully extracted her from the rubble. Her armor was shattered across the chest and left shoulder, the underlying tissue pulped from impact trauma. 3 broken ribs at minimum, probable internal bleeding, severe shoulder displacement, multiple lacerations. His scanner gave her maybe 10 minutes before her Valkyrie biology gave up and stopped trying. He worked fast. Coagulant injections where the bleeding was worst, plasma line in her primary vein. He'd studied enough Valkyrie anatomy to know where that was. Stabilization of her spine even though she didn't seem injured there, because you always assumed spinal trauma until proven otherwise. His hands moved through procedures he'd performed hundreds of times, and he talked because talking helped him focus. "All right, ma'am, you're in pretty bad shape, but nothing I can't handle. Broken ribs, shoulders a mess, some internal bleeding that we're going to stop right now with these very expensive drugs that my supply sergeant is going to kill me for using on an enemy combatant." He checked her vitals, watched them stabilize fractionally. "You've got interesting biology, close enough to human that my training mostly applies, different enough that I'm guessing on dosages. If you wake up feeling strange, that's probably my fault." Her armor was too damaged to leave on. The broken plates were pressing against wounds and causing more damage. Ryan cut through the bindings, carefully removed the pieces, trying not to think about how ornate they were, how expensive, how this was clearly someone important. Didn't matter. Important or not, she was bleeding out in front of him. He was cleaning the lacerations on her face when her eyes opened. Silver, pure molten silver with geometric patterns that shifted and moved as she focused on him. Ryan froze mid-motion, suddenly very aware that he was alone with an enemy combatant who might wake up violent despite being critically injured. But she didn't move aggressively, just stared at him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. Her lips moved, forming words in her language that his translator earpiece struggled with before producing. "What are you doing?" "Saving your life. Try not to move. Your ribs are broken, and if you shift wrong, you'll puncture a lung. Ryan resumed cleaning her facial wounds, forcing himself to focus on the medicine instead of those unnerving eyes. You are human. Not a question. Yeah, coalition medic. You're Velkari, and before you ask, I'm treating you because that's my job regardless of what flag you fight under. He checked his scanner, adjusted her plasma flow. You took a hell of a hit. What got you? Their mech unit. Her voice was rough, strained with pain she was clearly trying to hide. They did not recognize me in the chaos. Friendly fire, that's rough. Ryan moved to her ribs, needed to palpate them to check for displacement. This is going to hurt. I have to make sure nothing's shifted that could cause more damage. He pressed gently against her side, feeling for broken bone, and she went absolutely still. Not the stillness of someone in pain, but something else, something deliberate and strange. Her hand shot out and caught his wrist, not violently but firmly, stopping his examination. "Wait," she said. "Ma'am, I need to check your ribs. Internal bleeding is still a concern. I understand, but you need to understand something first." Those silver eyes bored into his. "Be careful, human. I am not just any woman. What you are doing, touching me like this, caring for me while I am helpless, it carries consequences you do not comprehend." Ryan frowned, his medic brain cataloging this as possible head trauma or shock-induced confusion. "With respect, you're severely injured and probably in shock. I'm going to continue treating you, and we can discuss consequences after I make sure you're not dying. You do not understand our customs, my people's laws." She released his wrist, but her gaze remained intense. "When someone of my standing is wounded, when they are vulnerable and helpless, and another offers care without obligation or expectation, there are protocols, bonds, ancient traditions that govern such moments." Bonds. Ryan resumed his examination because her ribs weren't going to fix themselves while she talked about customs. "Yes, and you," she paused, seemed to struggle with something. "You should be careful who you touch, medic, because I am choosing to allow this, and that choice has meaning you cannot yet understand." Ryan chalked this up to cultural differences. He didn't have time to navigate. Velkari society was apparently big on hierarchy and tradition. He'd sat through enough briefings to know that much. "I'm going to keep working. You can explain your traditions after I make sure you don't die from internal bleeding." He continued his examination and she let him, but that intense gaze never left his face. He could feel it like physical pressure, watching every move he made, every touch of his hands against her injured body. It should have made him uncomfortable, but Ryan had long ago learned to tune out everything except the medicine when he was working. The ribs were bad but manageable. The shoulder needed surgical intervention he couldn't provide in the field. The internal bleeding was slowing thanks to the coagulants, and her Velkari physiology was already starting to compensate. She'd live, assuming he could get her to proper medical facilities within the next 12 hours. Ryan sat back against the rubble, allowing himself a moment to catch his breath. 3 hours of continuous triage was catching up with him. The woman, he still didn't know her name, watched him with that same unsettling intensity. "You have saved my life," she said quietly. "That's the job." "No, your job is to save your soldiers. I am your enemy, your adversary in this war. And yet you have expended valuable resources, precious time, your own safety to ensure I survive." She paused. "Why?" Ryan was too tired for philosophy. "Because you needed help and I could provide it. That's all the reason I need." "That is all the reason you need," she repeated, and something in her voice suggested she was filing this away, analyzing it. "Remember this moment, human medic. Remember that you chose to help when you could have walked away. Remember that you touched me with care when I was too weak to command or defend." "I'll add it to the list of memorable moments," Ryan said, too exhausted for her cryptic warnings to land with proper weight. "What's your name?" "You do not know." She seemed genuinely surprised. "You truly do not recognize me." "Should I?" "You're Velkari, clearly high-ranking based on the armor, but beyond that," he shrugged. I'm a medic, not intelligence. She stared at him for a long moment, then something that might have been a smile crossed her face. Perhaps that is better, perhaps that is why, she stopped herself. My name is Lyris, Commander Lyris Val Sharon. Commander, so I was right about the high-ranking part. Ryan checked his scanner, confirmed she was stable enough to survive until evac arrived. Well, Commander Lyris, you're going to live. Congratulations. And you are Corporal Ryan Torres, 3rd Expeditionary Medical Unit. He started repacking his medkit, muscle memory taking over. When my people come back to sweep for survivors, I'll make sure you're evacuated to proper medical facilities. You would do that, ensure I receive care. Yeah, why wouldn't I? Because I am the enemy. Because allowing me to recover means I will return to fight your people again. She said it like she was testing him, waiting for his response. Ryan looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since starting treatment. Silver eyes that held something complicated he couldn't identify, blood and dirt streaking her face, the vulnerability of someone who'd been helpless and hated it. Maybe you will, he said finally, but that's a problem for tomorrow. Today you're my patient, and I don't leave patients to die, regardless of politics. Lyris went very still again, that same deliberate stillness from before. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried weight. You are unlike anyone I have met, Ryan Torres, and you have done something tonight that you do not yet understand the magnitude of. Saved your life. Chosen me. She said it with finality, with certainty. Whether you comprehend it or not, you have touched a queen at her weakest moment. And by the ancient laws of my people, that means you are mine now, and I do not surrender what is mine. The words should have sounded like a threat. Instead, they sounded like a promise. Ryan was too tired to parse which, and exhaustion was pulling at him hard. Get some rest, Commander. We'll figure out what that means when you're not bleeding internally. Her eyes closed, but just before unconsciousness took her, she whispered something his translator couldn't quite catch. It might have been thank you, or it might have been something else entirely. Ryan didn't know, didn't have energy to care. He settled against the rubble beside her, keeping watch because leaving a critical patient unattended was against every instinct he had. The fire crackled, the wreckage cooled, and somewhere in the ruins of Outpost KL-7, a human medic and a Velkari commander began something that would change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Ryan dozed fitfully, jerking awake every time Lyris's breathing changed, checking her vitals with automatic precision. Around 400 hours, coalition forces returned for survivor retrieval, and Ryan flagged them down, insisted they transport his Velkari patient to the medical frigate despite protests. He pulled rank he didn't technically have, used his reputation as the best trauma medic in the unit, and eventually got his way because nobody wanted to argue with Torres when he had that look in his eyes. They loaded Lyris onto a transport, and Ryan climbed in beside her because she was his patient, and he didn't trust anyone else to monitor her condition properly. She didn't wake during the transfer, but her hand found his at some point during the flight, gripped it with surprising strength for someone unconscious. Ryan didn't pull away, just sat there holding the hand of an enemy combatant who told him he was hers now, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into by doing his job. The answer, he would learn, was far more complicated than he could possibly imagine. The medical frigate Mercy's Hand was a converted cargo hauler that smelled like disinfectant and recycled air, with medical bays that had been designed by someone who'd clearly never actually practiced medicine. Ryan had spent 8 months working on this floating disaster and had long ago stopped complaining about the inadequate facilities. You worked with what you had. He stayed with Lyris through intake, through the initial protests from the triage nurses who wanted to know why he was wasting resources on an enemy prisoner, through the eventual acceptance when he explained, with perhaps more force than necessary, that she was critically injured and he'd already stabilized her in the field so they were damn well going to finish the job. Dr. Reeves, the chief medical officer, found him 6 hours later in the recovery bay where Lyris was hooked to monitors that beeped with reassuring regularity. "Tours, my office, now." Ryan looked at his patient, still unconscious, vitals stable, and reluctantly followed. Reeves's office was barely large enough for a desk and 2 chairs, crammed with files and medical journals and empty coffee cups that spoke to chronic sleep deprivation. "Sit." Reeves gestured at the chair. "Explain to me why you brought an enemy combatant to my medical frigate, used significant resources on her care, and are currently hovering over her like she's coalition personnel." "She was critically injured. I stabilized her. Leaving her would have violated medical ethics. Medical ethics also say we prioritize our own forces. She was the only critical patient I encountered. Our wounded were either stable or expectant. She needed immediate intervention or she'd die." Ryan met Reeves's eyes. "I'm a medic. I don't see flags, I see patients." Reeves leaned back, studied him. "You've always been stubborn about this, treating everyone equally regardless of what side they're on. I've never figured out if it makes you the best medic I have or the biggest liability. Can it be both?" "Apparently," Reeves sighed. "Command is asking questions. About why we have a Velkari officer in our medical bay. About why you specifically requested she be kept here instead of transferred to the prisoner processing. She's my patient. I'm responsible for her care until she's recovered enough to transfer. That's not standard protocol." "Since when have I followed standard protocol?" Ryan asked, and Reeves had no answer because they both knew Tors had a reputation for doing things his own way and getting results that made people overlook the violations. "She wakes up, you let me know immediately. And Tors, be careful. Enemy combatants don't become friends just because you saved their lives." Ryan returned to the recovery bay and found Lyris awake. Those silver eyes tracked him as he entered, and there was no confusion in them, no disorientation, just immediate focused awareness. "You're still here. Where else would I be? With your own people, your own duties." She tried to sit up, winced, settled back. "I am your prisoner now. You're my patient. Different thing entirely." Ryan checked her monitors, noted that her Velkari physiology was healing faster than human normal. Impressive. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was crushed by a mech, which I was." She watched him adjust her plasma line. "You stayed with me, ensured I received proper care, argued with your superiors on my behalf." "You heard that." "Velkari hearing is superior to human. I heard many things while I was recovering." She paused. "You protected me from your own people who wanted to treat me as merely a prisoner to be processed. Because you're injured. When you're recovered, then they can process you however they want. Until then, you're under my medical authority." Ryan sat in the chair beside her bed. "Speaking of which, I should probably know more about my patient. Commander Lyris Val Sharon." "What does the Val mean?" Something shifted in her expression. "It indicates royal bloodline. House Sharon has ruled the Velkari Empire for 17 generations. Ryan processed this. "Your royalty." "I am crown princess. Third in line to the throne." She said it matter-of-factly, watching for his reaction. "Does that change how you see me?" "Should it? You still have 3 broken ribs and a shoulder that needs surgical intervention. Your title doesn't make you any less injured." Lyris stared at him, and that intensity was back, that weight of her gaze that made him feel like she was cataloging every response, every micro-expression. "You truly do not care. That I am royalty, that I am your enemy, you simply see a patient in need. That's my job." "No, Ryan Tors, that is who you are." She shifted slightly, testing her movement. "I told you in the field that touching me carried consequences. That by caring for me in my moment of greatest vulnerability, you invoke something ancient and binding." "You mentioned bonds. I assumed it was shock talking." "It was not shock, it was truth." Lyris met his eyes. "My people have a law as old as our empire. The law of the wounded crown. It states that when someone of royal blood is injured and helpless, unable to command, unable to defend, stripped of all authority and power, and another offers aid freely without expectation or obligation, that person has demonstrated something rare: true compassion, genuine care for another being regardless of status or affiliation. Ryan sat back, okay, and the wounded royal is granted a choice: to claim that person as their own, as advisor, as companion, as consort, as whatever the royal deems appropriate. She paused. I am invoking that right. You saved me, Ryan Tors. You cared for me when every practical reason said you should not. And by the ancient laws of my people, I am choosing you. The words hung in the sterile medical bay air like ordnance waiting to detonate. Ryan stared at her, trying to process what she was actually saying. You're choosing me. For what? To be mine, in whatever capacity you will accept. Lyris's voice was steady, certain. You would return with me to the Empire when I am recovered and negotiations conclude. You would be under my protection, granted status and resources, given purpose and position at my side. That's, Ryan stopped, restarted. Commander, with respect, that's insane. I'm a medic, a coalition soldier. I have duties, responsibilities. I can't just abandon everything because of some ancient tradition I didn't know existed. You can, you will. There was steel beneath her words now. Because I have chosen, and when royalty chooses, nations bend to accommodate. Your coalition will be contacted. Diplomatic channels will open, and you will be released to my custody as part of broader arrangements. You're going to negotiate for me, like I'm some kind of— He stopped, frustrated. I'm not a bargaining chip. You are my choice, under my protection by right and law. Lyris's expression softened slightly. I am not asking permission, Ryan. I am informing you of what will occur, so you have time to prepare. And if I refuse, if I say I don't want this— Something flickered in her eyes, not anger, but something closer to pain. Then I will be forced to honor your refusal. And I will return to my empire having failed to claim what I earned by right. Something in Ryan's chest twisted at that admission. He thought about his own loneliness, months in combat zones, years of deployments, watching friends die or rotate home while he stayed because someone had to. The isolation that came from always being the one who fixed people but never having anyone to fix him. I need time to think about this, to understand what you're actually offering. You have until I am cleared for transport. 3 days, according to your Dr. Reeves. Lyris settled back into her bed, exhaustion pulling at her. Think carefully, Ryan Tors, because if you say yes, your life will change in ways you cannot predict. And if you say no, her voice went quiet. If you say no, mine will remain as it has always been, and I am discovering I do not want that anymore. She closed her eyes, conversation clearly over. Ryan sat there for a long time, watching her sleep, trying to process an impossible decision that somehow felt inevitable. Over the next 3 days, Ryan didn't sleep much. He worked his shifts, treated patients, and spent his downtime with Lyris, ostensibly monitoring her recovery, actually talking about everything. She told him about the Empire, about growing up as third in line to the throne, close enough to power to understand it but far enough away to never expect it. About the crushing weight of expectation, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who couldn't see past her title. He told her about Earth, about growing up in San Diego with parents who were doctors and siblings he hadn't seen in 2 years. About joining the coalition because he wanted to help people, wanted to make a difference, and ended up in war zones watching people die over resources and borders. You sound tired, Lyris observed during one conversation. I am, of the war, of watching good people die for reasons that feel increasingly stupid, of being so far from home that I'm forgetting what normal feels like. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. I've got 18 months left on my contract. After that, I don't know, maybe go home, find a hospital somewhere quiet, try to decompress. Or you could come with me, to an empire we're at war with. To an empire that would value you, where you could practice medicine without battlefields, could actually help people heal instead of just keeping them alive long enough to fight again. Lyris leaned forward. I need someone like you, Ryan. Someone who tells truth instead of what I want to hear. Someone who sees people instead of politics. Someone who cares about healing instead of conquest. You barely know me. I know you saved my life when every practical reason said don't. I know you stayed when you could have walked away. I know you look at me like I'm a person instead of a princess. Her hand found his. I am not asking you to love me. I am asking you to trust me, to give this a chance, to let me show you that being mine is not prison but partnership. Ryan looked at their joined hands and wondered if he was about to make the best decision of his life or the worst. If I say yes, what happens, specifically? You return with me to Velcara Prime, quarters in the Royal Wing, status as my chosen companion under full protection of my name. You could continue practicing medicine. We have hospitals that would benefit from your knowledge. Or you could advise me on humanitarian policy, help reform how we handle occupied populations. Her grip tightened. You would be mine and I would be yours, partners. And if I want to visit Earth, I would arrange it. Safe passage, diplomatic protocols. I would not separate you from your world, Ryan. I am claiming you, not imprisoning you. He studied her face, looking for manipulation or hidden agenda, found only honesty and hope. One more question. Is this really about ancient law, or is there something else? Lyris was quiet for a long moment. Then, the law is real, but the truth. When I woke up and saw you caring for me, I felt safe. Like someone actually cared if I lived or died, not because of my value to the Empire, but because I was a person. And I have been lonely, Ryan, so lonely, until you. She met his eyes. I am choosing you because you make me feel like I matter, not as crown princess, just as Lyris. The honesty broke something in Ryan's chest. He thought about his next 18 months. More deployments, more casualties, more patching soldiers together just to send them back to die. Then going home to a life that would feel hollow because you didn't survive war zones and come back unchanged. Or he could choose something different, something that might actually matter. Okay, he said quietly. Hope flared in her silver eyes. Okay? Yes, I'll come with you, I'll try this, but I have conditions. Name them. I keep practicing medicine. That's non-negotiable. Agreed, you'll have the best facilities in the Empire. I visit Earth regularly, already promised, and you don't own me. This is partnership or I leave. Lyris nodded seriously. I claim you by custom, but I will not treat you as property. You have my word. One more thing. Ryan took a breath. You let me in. No royal masks, no political walls. If this works, I need to see the real you. Vulnerability crossed her face. That may be the hardest condition, but yes, I will try. They sat together, hands joined, and Ryan wondered if he just made an insane decision. But looking at Lyris, at the hope and relief in her expression, he thought maybe this could work. 3 days later, the coalition approved his transfer as part of diplomatic negotiations. Ryan Torres packed his single bag and prepared to follow an alien princess into an empire he'd been fighting, betting everything on a bond formed in blood and battlefield care. And maybe, just maybe, he'd finally found something worth staying for. The Velcari diplomatic transport was sleek and efficient in ways that made coalition vessels look like repurposed cargo haulers, which technically the Mercy's Hand was. Ryan stood in the docking bay with his duffel bag. Everything he owned that mattered fit in one bag, which said something about his life he didn't want to examine too closely, and watched his unit gather to see him off. Sergeant Chen gripped his shoulder. You sure about this, Torres? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's either brave or stupid. Probably both, Sarge. His commanding officer, Captain Okonkwo, approached last. You're one of the best medics I've ever served with. We're losing a valuable asset. There are other medics, sir. Not like you. Okonkwo extended his hand. Whatever you're walking into over there, remember, you're still coalition. That doesn't change just because you're living with the enemy. Ryan shook his hand. With respect, sir, maybe they're not the enemy anymore, or at least maybe they don't have to be. Optimistic, I'll miss that about you. Okonkwo stepped back. Good luck, Tors. You're going to need it. Lyris was waiting at the airlock, fully recovered now, wearing ceremonial armor that made her look like she could personally conquer star systems. But when she saw Ryan, her expression softened into something almost shy. You came. I gave my word. He shouldered his bag, ready to show me this empire of yours, more ready than you know. The transport was comfortable in ways coalition ships weren't, with actual quarters instead of bunks and food that didn't taste like recycled protein paste. Ryan spent the 6-day journey through hyperspace learning everything he could about Velkari culture, and Lyris was patient with his endless questions. The Velkari Empire was old, 17 generations of the Sharon bloodline ruling over 43 systems, with a population in the hundreds of billions. Hierarchical but meritocratic, with strict social protocols but surprising mobility for those who demonstrated competence. The current empress, Kailindra Val Sharon, was Lyris's mother and reportedly a formidable leader who'd expanded the empire's territory by 12% during her reign. She will want to meet you, Lyris said during one of their conversations in her quarters, to assess whether you're worthy of the honor I've bestowed. No pressure then. She is intense, but fair. Just be yourself. That is what I chose. Lyris paused. And Ryan, thank you for taking this chance. I know it must be terrifying. Terrifying is accurate, but also, he looked at her, really looked at her. Also right somehow, like I'm supposed to be here. Her smile transformed her face. I feel the same. When they arrived at Velkara Prime, Ryan got his first look at the Empire's heart. The planet was beautiful in an alien way, purple-tinted oceans, cities that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being imposed on it, spires that reached toward a sky filled with 2 moons. The capital sprawled beneath them, impossibly vast, and Ryan felt vertigo at the sheer alienness of everything. Lyris's hand found his. Overwhelming. That's putting it mildly. You will adjust. I will help you. The royal palace was exactly as excessive as Ryan expected. Soaring architecture, precious metals everywhere, guards who watched him with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. Lyris led him through corridors designed to intimidate, and Ryan focused on breathing steadily and not looking like a country kid overwhelmed by the big city, even though that's exactly what he was. The Empress received them in a private chamber rather than the throne room, which Lyris had explained was a good sign, treating this as family business rather than state ceremony. Empress Kailindra Val Sharon was imposing even by Velkari standards, tall and sharp-featured, with silver eyes that missed nothing. So you are the human medic who invoked the law of the wounded crown. Her voice carried absolute authority. I didn't invoke anything, Your Majesty. I just did my job. You saved my daughter's life when leaving her would have been safer, easier, more advantageous to your own forces. Kailindra circled him slowly, evaluating. Why? Because she was injured and I'm a medic. It's not complicated. It is precisely that simplicity that makes you interesting. The Empress stopped in front of him. Lyris has chosen you. By our law, I cannot override that choice unless you prove unworthy or unwilling. Are you either? I'm willing. Whether I'm worthy is for her to decide. Something that might have been approval flickered across Kailindra's face. You have unusual humility for a human. I am told your species tends toward arrogance. Some of us. Others just try to do good work and not die. And which are you? The latter, though I have my moments. Kailindra actually smiled, brief and sharp. I like you, Ryan Tors. You are direct, unburdened by the political calculations that make most palace conversations exhausting. She glanced at Lyris. You chose well, daughter. I approve this bond. Lyris's relief was visible. Thank you, mother. Do not thank me yet. Keeping him will be harder than claiming him. Kailindra turned back to Ryan. You will face opposition. Nobles who see you as an upstart alien, military officers who view you as potential spy, citizens who cannot understand why their princess chose a human over her own kind. Can you handle that? Ryan thought about combat zones, about working under impossible conditions while people died around him. I've handled worse, Your Majesty. We shall see. She gestured dismissal. Lyris, show him his quarters. Introduce him to your household. And Ryan Tors, welcome to the Empire. Try not to disappoint us. The quarters were absurd, larger than any place Ryan had lived, with windows overlooking the city and technology he didn't understand but that seemed to anticipate his needs. It was beautiful and overwhelming and completely excessive. This is too much, he said. This is appropriate for my chosen companion. Lyris moved to stand beside him at the window. You will need to adjust to many things. The politics, the protocol, the attention, but you will not face it alone. And when you're busy being a princess, then my household staff will assist you, people I trust, who will help you navigate without judgment. She turned to face him. I know this is overwhelming, but you are capable of handling it. You survived war. You handled my mother better than most nobles manage. You will thrive here. Ryan wanted to believe her. Over the next weeks he started to. Lyris kept her promises. She let him in, showed him the person beneath the princess. They spent evenings talking about everything and nothing. She had dry wit and surprising appreciation for human music. She introduced him to palace medical staff, helped him establish a clinic where he could practice and teach. She took him to civilian hospitals, showed him healthcare challenges the empire faced, asked his opinion on reforms. The opposition Kailindra warned about materialized quickly. Nobles who made snide comments about the human pet within his hearing. Military officers who questioned his loyalty and suggested he was coalition spy. Anonymous threats left in his quarters. Nothing violent but clear messages that he wasn't welcome. Ryan handled it with the same calm he'd used in combat zones. Acknowledge the threat. Don't engage emotionally. Focus on the work. He treated patients at his clinic regardless of their politics. He advised Lyris on humanitarian policy with brutal honesty. He attended functions at her side and endured the stares and whispers because that's what he'd signed up for. And slowly, grudgingly, some people warmed to him. The hospital staff appreciated his expertise and teaching methods. Common citizens who came to his clinic found he treated everyone equally, regardless of status. Even some nobles admitted quietly, privately, that perhaps the princess's choice wasn't entirely insane, but there were still problems. 3 months after arriving, Ryan was treating a patient at his clinic when a Velkhari noble, Lord Keithran, vocal opponent of Lyris's humanitarian reforms, entered with 2 guards. Corporal Tors, or should I say the princess's human curiosity. Ryan didn't look up from his patient. Lord Keithran, if you're here for medical care, take a seat. If you're here to cause problems, please leave. I'm here to understand why our crown princess has debased herself by choosing an alien, a former enemy, a medic with no status or breeding. Then you should ask her, not me. Ryan finished bandaging his patient's arm, made notes on treatment. I'm busy. Keithran's guards moved forward, but Ryan's Velkhari medical assistant, a young woman named Sierra who'd warmed to him quickly, stepped between them. This is a medical facility. Violence is prohibited by imperial law. Stand aside, girl. No, my lord. The human is under crown princess protection. Threatening him threatens her, and threatening royalty is treason. Sierra stood her ground despite being clearly terrified. The standoff lasted 3 heartbeats before Keithran sneered and left. Ryan waited until his patient departed before turning to Sierra. You didn't have to do that. You could have stayed out of it. You are good doctor, good teacher, good person. Sierra shrugged. Lord Keithran is pompous fool, easy choice. Ryan laughed despite the tension. Thank you, Sierra. That night he told Lyris about the confrontation. She listened with growing fury, then stood abruptly. I will handle Keithran. Lyris, no. This is exactly what he wants, to provoke a response that makes you look emotionally compromised. He threatened you, he postured, there's a difference. Ryan caught her hand. I can handle nobles with opinions. What I can't handle is you starting political wars on my behalf. That helps no one. She sat back down, frustration evident. I do not like that people treat you this way. You deserve respect. I'll earn it, through the work, through proving I'm here to help, not to exploit your favor. He squeezed her hand. But I appreciate the protective impulse. It is more than impulse. You are mine. Protecting you is not optional. I'm starting to understand that about you. 4 months after arriving at Velcara Prime, things shifted. Ryan had been working with Velcari doctors to develop better trauma protocols for civilian casualties, war zone medicine applied to peacetime emergencies. The results were impressive, reducing mortality rates by 18% in the hospitals that implemented his methods. Lyris presented these results at a council meeting, and even Keithran's faction couldn't argue with the numbers. Lives saved, resources optimized, genuine improvement in civilian care. The human medic who'd seemed like self-indulgent royal whim was actually contributing valuable expertise. Public opinion started shifting too. Common citizens appreciated the improved health care. Soldiers who'd fought humans and been injured valued Ryan's willingness to treat former enemies with the same care as Velcari. And slowly, grudgingly, Ryan stopped being the human pet and became Princess Lyris's human advisor, or sometimes just Dr. Tors. The night after the council presentation, Lyris found Ryan in the palace gardens, staring at the alien stars. She sat beside him in comfortable silence they'd learned to share. "Do you regret it?" she asked finally. "Coming here. Some days, when the politics get exhausting or Keithran says something particularly stupid." He leaned back. "But most days, no, this is good, strange and hard, but good. I am glad." She paused. "I regret how we met. That war brought us together. Maybe, but maybe the war just accelerated what would have happened anyway." Ryan turned to look at her. "I don't believe in fate, but I believe in choices. And choosing to come here, it's the best decision I've made in years." Lyris met his eyes and something passed between them, something they'd been dancing around for months. "Ryan," he kissed her before she could finish, gentle and certain, and she responded with intensity that suggested she'd been waiting, hoping, not daring to assume. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lyris was smiling. "I have wanted to do that since you first bandaged my wounds. You could have. I wouldn't have objected. It felt important to wait, to make sure this was real." She touched his face. "But it is real. What we have built. It is more than law and custom. It is choice." "Yeah." Ryan pulled her closer. "It is." They sat together under alien stars, and Ryan thought about the battlefield where a medic saved a wounded princess and changed both their lives forever. He thought about the choices that brought him here, the risks he'd taken, the life he'd left behind. And he thought that maybe, just maybe, some wounds healed better than you ever expected when you found the right person to help. 6 months after Ryan arrived at Velcara Prime, the palace hosted a state ceremony marking the first formal peace treaty between the Coalition and the Velcari Empire. Ryan stood beside Lyris in the Grand Hall, the same hall where he'd first met the Empress, surrounded by diplomats from both sides, all of them pretending the last 3 years of conflict had been unfortunate misunderstanding rather than brutal warfare. He wore formal attire that Lyris's staff had prepared, Velcari style but adapted for human physiology, and he felt absurdly out of place among the royalty and high-ranking officials. Lyris seemed to sense his discomfort and leaned close. "Nervous? Terrified? You?" "The same, but we face it together." The peace treaty wasn't solely because of them. There were complex political and economic factors, territorial agreements, trade negotiations. But they were part of it. A living symbol that former enemies could become partners, that healing was stronger than hurting. The human medic and the Velcari princess, proving that connection across species was possible. Empress Kalindra gave a speech about new eras and mutual benefit. The coalition's diplomatic envoy responded with carefully neutral platitudes. And through it all, Ryan stood beside Lyris, visible to everyone, a statement that the Empire's third-in-line to the throne had chosen a human, and the Empire hadn't collapsed from the scandal. After the ceremony, during the reception, Ryan found himself cornered by Coalition Ambassador Wei, a sharp-eyed woman who'd been part of the treaty negotiations. Corporal Tors, or is it Dr. Tors now? Just Ryan is fine, Ambassador. I've been hearing interesting things about you, medical reforms, humanitarian policy advising, quite the career change from combat medic. Wei sipped her drink. Some in the coalition wonder about your loyalties. I'm loyal to healing people, doesn't matter what flag they're under. That's admirably principled, also politically naive. Wei smiled. But perhaps that's what makes you valuable. You're genuine. In a galaxy full of political maneuvering, genuine is rare. Is there a point to this conversation, Ambassador? Just assessing, trying to understand if you're a coalition asset living in the Empire or if we've genuinely lost you to the other side. She paused. Which is it? Ryan thought about his life here, the clinic, the reforms, Lyris. I'm not anyone's asset. I'm a medic who fell in love with a princess and decided to stay. Everything else is just details. Wei's eyebrows rose. In love? That's the first time I've heard you phrase it that way. Yeah, me too. Ryan glanced across the room where Lyris was engaged in diplomatic conversation, handling it with grace he admired. But it's accurate. Well then. Good luck, Ryan Tors. You're going to need it. That night, after the diplomats left and the palace returned to something approaching normal, over the next months, they did exactly that, built something lasting. Ryan's medical reforms expanded to 12 hospital systems. Lyris's humanitarian policies reduced civilian casualties in occupied territories by 40%. And together, they became proof that former enemies could be partners, that healing was possible, that love could cross any divide if you were brave enough. There were still challenges. Kithrin's faction continued causing problems, though with decreasing effectiveness as Ryan's work proved valuable. Some coalition hardliners viewed Ryan as traitor. And navigating two cultures, two political systems, two very different approaches to everything required constant effort. But there were also victories. The clinic Ryan established became model for empire-wide medical education reform. Lyris's policies inspired other systems to prioritize humanitarian considerations. And their relationship, public, visible, genuine, helped shift perceptions on both sides about what was possible between species. A year after arriving at Velcara Prime, Ryan received message from Earth. His family, finally able to contact him through newly established diplomatic channels. His mother's message was simple. We saw you at the treaty ceremony. We're proud of you. Come visit when you can. Bring your princess. We want to meet her. Ryan showed the message to Lyris and she smiled. Your mother commands my attendance. I am obligated to comply. That's not how diplomatic protocols work. It is now I have decided. She paused. I would like to meet your family, see your homeworld, understand where you came from. Fair warning, San Diego is nothing like Velcara Prime. My family is loud. My siblings will ask embarrassing questions, and my mother will definitely try to feed you too much food. That sounds wonderful. They visited Earth 3 months later, and it was wonderful, chaotic and overwhelming and completely different from palace life, but wonderful. Ryan's family welcomed Lyris with warmth that clearly startled her, treated her like Ryan's girlfriend rather than royalty, and asked pointed questions about her intentions toward their son that made Ryan want to die of embarrassment. But Lyris handled it perfectly, charmed his siblings, bonded with his mother over medical stories, and by the end of the week had his entire family convinced she was good for him. On their last night on Earth, sitting on the beach where Ryan had grown up, Lyris spoke quietly. I understand now why you are the way you are. Your family they love without condition, without politics. They just love. Yeah, I'm lucky that way. We both are. She leaned against him. Thank you for sharing them with me. Thank you for coming, for trying this, for being willing to step into my world the way I stepped into yours. They returned to Velcara Prime as genuine partners, not just by ancient law but by choice. They built lives that spanned two worlds, two cultures, proving that connection was possible if you worked at it. 2 years after that battlefield where Medic saved wounded Princess, Ryan and Lyris stood together at another ceremony. This one celebrating 5 years of stable peace between Coalition and Empire. Ryan had been officially granted Velcari citizenship while maintaining his Coalition ties. Lyris had been named Ambassador for Humanitarian Affairs, with Ryan as her primary advisor. They changed both their societies in small but meaningful ways, proved that former enemies could become family, that healing was stronger than hurting, that love could cross any divide. Do you ever think about that battlefield? Lyris asked during the reception, where we met. Sometimes, usually when I'm patching someone up and they're being particularly stubborn about following medical advice. Ryan smiled. Why? Because I think about it often. About how one choice, your choice to help me when you could have walked away, changed everything. She took his hand. I was wounded, you healed me, and in healing me you healed something larger, possibility, hope. The idea that we could be better than our conflicts. We did that together. Yes, together. She squeezed his hand. Which is how we will continue, partners, in healing, in reform, in building something better, partners in all the ways that matter. Ryan looked at her. This princess who'd chosen him, this brilliant woman who'd let him in, this partner who made him better than he'd been, and thought about how sometimes the most important medical interventions weren't physical. Sometimes healing meant choosing connection over isolation, choosing hope over fear, choosing to see the person instead of the enemy. He'd saved Lyris's life on a battlefield. But she'd saved his too, from loneliness, from cynicism, from a future that would have been smaller and colder without her in it. They were warriors in their own way, fighting for peace instead of territory, for healing instead of conquest, for a future where former enemies became family and love could cross any divide. And standing together in the palace they now called home, surrounded by people from two worlds learning to understand each other, Ryan and Lyris proved that sometimes the strongest...
¿Qué rayos, Adecone? ¿Cómo estás, hermano? Ni licencia tengo y vemos qué pedo, bebo. Eso es todo, güey, con la de Diosito, güey. Ni la sabe manejar, ni nada. No te vayas a caer como la Tsuli, güey. No, chad, esta mierda está imposible.
Puto! ¿No se le para la verguilla o qué? Culero, te pego, me trajiste la chévere.
¡Cállate, cabrón!
Se reprodujo esta carta.
Oh, no, me van a aventar un vergazo, güey. ¿Qué rollo?
Tu reputa madre, pinche
Niños,
jodido, pobre
niños.
mediocre, por eso
vales verga,
cabrón.
Por eso nunca vas a salir de jodido y de pobreto.
Se reprodujo.
Hola, tranqui. Hola, Rampa, ¿cómo estás, hermano? Bienvenido, buenas tardes. Con tal de que no choque. Sí, tú nada más acuérdate de algo, señor. Freno en emergencia. Aunque se te apague la moto, no hay pedo. Pero si le aprietas al clutch, GG te fuiste. Tienes dos frenos, recuerda el de la pata y el de enfrente. Recuerda que el de acá es el que te lanza de hocico y el de la pata es el de atrás y ya.
Ahí, cabrón, ya no te la jales, esponja, porque Diosito sufre. Yo por eso recomiendo el reciclaje de leche. Si la expulsas, tómatela.
Tómatela toda. Yo quiero una doble Western Bacon, güey. Hay un chingo de repartidores atrás de mí, güey. Hay otros 4, enfrente hay otros 4. No, no mames. Güey, no tiene... No, no. Ay, 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 ay.
Se reprodujo esta carta.
Que no mames, cabrón. Qué pinche
Qué
vergüenza
vergüenza
me
me
das.
das.
Eres mi amigo, cabrón, pero eres puto. Y eso me da muchísima pena, cabrón. Que se te quite ya lo puto. No mames, güey.
Se reprodujo esta
Ya me enjeté, yo también. ¿Ya? No, no mami, no me lo quería quitar, güey. No me lo quería quitar, pero es imposible. Y luego en la zona de niños está Beli y Beto, güey. Ya llegué de la chamba, ¿qué has hecho hoy? Güey, vine por el primer pedido y hay un vergo de gente, cabrón.
Yo soy gay. Pito, 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 pito.
Se reprodujo esta carta.
Ya me quité el casco, güey. Ya,
¿Te
por favor.
palpita el ano? ¿Sientes palpitaciones en el ano? Tienes el ano
Ay,
tocado.
no.
Debes irte inmediatamente por urgencia.
Se reprodujo esta carta.
Dale, verga. Pinche calorón, ya cancélalo, güey. Es corto el pedido. No. No lo quiero cancelar. Yo. Yo, el mío. Ay, ¿tú por qué me apareces con casi 600 viewers? Porque estamos en portada de Twitch. Lo más seguro es que esté en portada de Twitch. Y eso hay una única manera de verlo. No. En teoría estoy en portada de Twitch.
¿Dónde estoy? ¿Dónde salgo, mijo?
¿Eh?
¿Por qué no salgo?
¿Cómo que no?
Ah,
Ahí
ya
estás.
ya me vi. No vengan al Carl Junior, por favor, ya somos muchos.
Sí, son un chingo, güey. Twitch sí avisó. Detente, coche, no te me acerques.